Many video games these days are full of bombastic action, with loads of explosions and violence and all sort of things the media like to absolutely blow out of proportion and point their fingers at every time something goes wrong in society. Whether you're playing Call of Duty or Spider-Man, the sheer amount of stuff that is blasted into your eyeballs and competing for your attention at any given time can be quite overwhelming. However, there is a whole set of games that is diametrically opposed to this stereotype, and those are casual puzzle games. This subgenre and the wholesome content that can be found within it make for a much less stressful experience, allowing players to go at their own pace, often alongside a mellow soundtrack and pastel colours that help to calm their mind and sometimes even curb anxiety, making these titles a great option to wind down with at the end of a stressful day. Get ready to get cozy, because I'm Ashton from Triple Jump, and here are 10 casual puzzle games to help you unwind. Number 10. Hidden Lands. Puzzle games, especially those that are aiming to be more casual than frustrating, tend to have very basic and easy to understand mechanics, and maybe one of the easiest puzzles there is one where you're expected to spot the difference. Hidden Lands presents players with a series of 3D levels and tasks them with finding a certain number of differences between the two mini-worlds, which can be rotated and viewed at different angles in order to really see what's going on, and restoring each to their original state by figuring out what's out of place. There is a story mode of sorts, which branches into 3 different paths, each with their own aesthetic and treasures to unearth, which will be given to the player as rewards as they complete each level. If you want even less stress though, there's also a procedurally generated endless mode, which, appropriately enough, creates a never-ending series of levels, no two of which are going to be quite the same, and which don't have any sort goal attached, to make the whole experience even more calming. Perhaps the best thing about it is that Hidden Lands is free on Steam, which means you don't even have to worry about the cost. If that's not a comforting thought, I don't know what is. Number 9. Rain on Your Parade. One of the best things about puzzles is that they come in many forms, and if you're in the mood for a bit of chaotic messing about, then there are games like Rain on Your Parade that will cater to that. Over the course of Rain on Your Parade, players take control of a mischievous cardboard rain cloud whose sole purpose in life is to go around ruining people's days and causing chaos in any way possible. Think Untitled Goose Game, with less honking, but at least as many spoiled picnics. Each of the levels have a collection of different goals, ranging from simple drenching to the polar opposite, arson. And absolutely no one is safe from this little cloud as it goes through the town, the inside of several buildings, and around a suspiciously familiar military base over the course of its many adventures. The main puzzle element of the game comes from figuring out how exactly to spark the sequence of events that lead to the poor townsfolk having a bad time. A task which is made more complicated as different powers and forms of precipitation are unlocked as the game progresses. Raining on someone's parade is one thing, but raining fire down upon them is a whole other level of chaos. Number 8. Inbento. We move from chaos to extreme organisation now, as we take a look at the cutesy food-based puzzler Inbento. In this game, players will be following an adorable cat family featured in sparse story vignettes, and helping them by putting different combinations of foods into bento boxes, using a specific number of food blocks to copy the pattern the game has given them. These start off relatively simple, but as both the game and the story progresses, there will be new ways to play with your food, using the movement options the game offers in order to shuffle around the different blocks and rotate pieces, and sometimes even stacking bits on top of each other in order to match an increasingly complicated design of bite-sized morsels. With its many levels and increasing difficulty, Inbento may be a bit tougher than many of the other casual puzzlers out there, but with its cute aesthetic, and did I mention cats, it's hard not to be charmed and relaxed by its soothing atmosphere, even if you may need a hand with the later challenges. You could say that this one is the comfort food of video games. Just don't play it on an empty stomach, maybe. Number 7. Assemble with Care. A lot of cozy puzzle games take relatively mundane tasks and turn them into a compelling story, with simple, pleasing puzzles and pleasant music that makes the everyday feel more comfortable. And one of those is Assemble with Care. The game follows antique restorer Maria as she moves into the town of Bellariva and establishes her business in her new home. Once she finally opens for business, she's able to use her skills to repair not only the various items the townsfolk bring to her, but work on their relationship with each other as well. This means that players must mess around with a variety of objects, taking them apart and fixing them up again, making sure to get all the pieces back in place in just the right way to ensure that everything works. In between these tinkering puzzles, there will be small snippets of story that show how each of the residents of Bellariva are doing. Though none of the puzzles are too challenging, players will have to pay close attention in later levels and keep an eye out for smaller pieces that will have to be removed and replaced. If you're a fan of taking things apart, this is a good way to do it without worrying about breaking anything. Number 6. Golf Peaks. From the same studio that brought us Invento, Golf Peaks is as much a puzzle game as it is a golf one. So don't worry if you aren't all that into whacking things around a fairway, as you don't need to know anything about golf to get something out of this title. Each of the game's golf-themed levels has a different mountainous setup, as well as a collection of cards along the bottom of the screen, each of which represents movement in a different direction. Using these, and a bit of intuitive use of physics and momentum, players will help to direct the golf ball to the goal before moving on to the next level. This sounds like it would be a relatively simple prospect, but as the game progresses, the layouts get more and more complicated, with gaps and all sorts of different new terrains that have to be traversed and dealt with in a multitude of ways, requiring careful planning and forethought, but leading to a great deal of satisfaction once players are able to work it out. The best thing is, once you finish with Golf Peaks, you'll be able to say that you're a golfing expert, as long as no one has any follow-up questions. Oh yes, I would like a sand wedge. That sounds delicious. Number 5. Regency Solitaire. Have you ever been playing Solitaire and thought, you know what this really needs is a heavy dose of Pride and Prejudice? No? Well, that's fair, but let me be the one to tell you that this odd combination comes together to form a surprisingly addictive whole. Mixing up Regency-era stories in the vein of Jane Austen and the classic game of Solitaire, Regency Solitaire follows Bella as she treks around England trying to restore her family's fortune and build her dream ballroom, all whilst attempting to avoid having to marry her terrible neighbour, Mr. Bleakley, and endeavouring to forge her own path instead. Each of the 20 chapters in the game have a number of different levels, as well as specific goals the player has to accomplish in order to progress, which could be collecting a particular item or getting a certain length card combo. These can be easier to obtain if players are smart with using their power-ups strategically, shuffling the cards around on the board, or using wild cards to continue their combos. Solitaire may always be solitaire, but it's a classic game for a reason, and this is perhaps one of the best virtual ways to play. Number 4. Mini Metro. There are plenty of games that have a player-created town or city, but not a lot of them focus on maintaining the transportation in those places. Mini Metro, however, is an exception. The goal is to build an efficient, functional rail system for a succession of different real-world cities, and expand them as each metropolis grows. New stations will be added to the map as this happens, and as passengers show up, they'll have to be shuttled to a station that matches their shape, travelling there as soon as the 2 points have been connected, assuming there's actually a train, that is. This never stops though, and players have to make sure to keep on top of the ever-increasing demands, as well as making sure to use bridges and tunnels strategically, as they only have so many that they can actually place at any time. If any of the stations become overcrowded, the game is over. This may sound stressful, however, players can pick just how difficult they want the experience to be, opting for either the normal or extreme modes, or going for the complete opposite of stress with either the endless or creative options. There's also a sequel, Mini Motorways, if you prefer personal transportation to public and just can't get enough of shuttling citygoers around. Number 3. Unpacking. If you've ever had to move house, you'll know just how stressful and, frankly, annoying packing and unpacking can be, even when everything has been labelled properly. It's a genuine surprise then that it makes for such an interesting and relaxing video game. The tale that Unpacking tells is quite subtle, and is presented almost entirely through the use of its many objects, with only snippets of text here and there. The items that travel through the game explain what's changed, both with what things stick with the protagonist, and where some get stored over the course of the 8 different times in her life that the players are privy to. As players experience each of these different glimpses into the protagonist's life, they'll decide where to place the items they've brought with them to each new home, making sure that everything is organised and placed in an appropriate spot. There is some freedom to place items as you wish, but once the player has put everything where they believe it should go, some of the items will be highlighted, indicating that they have to be moved elsewhere. The combination of the art, the subtle puzzle and storytelling elements, and the impressive Foley work that mimics a huge number of objects being placed on other objects make Unpacking a much more pleasant experience than it has any right to be. Number 2, A Monster's Expedition. In A Monster's Expedition, the titular monster is on a quest to dig up information about the mysterious humans that previously inhabited the area, and is traversing the various islands in the world in order to discover artifacts and learn about human society. In order to reach each of these islands, the monster will have to use the trees that can be found on each in order to construct rafts and bridges. And often there will be different ways to use them and different directions the players can proceed in, meaning they have their choice of where to go and what to explore as they make their way through the world. There's no tutorial, but the mechanics are simple and intuitive enough that it isn't a problem, and allows for creative solutions and natural discovery that makes the whole game feel more organic and satisfying to explore, and gives a greater sense of accomplishment once a particularly tricky bit has been dealt with. Best of all, since there is no specific direction to head in, there's always the option to try a new route, ensuring that the puzzle experience never gets more difficult than the player wants it to be, and allowing them to discover the world as they'd like to. And number 1, Dorfromantik. The main goal of Dorfromantik is to create a landscape using hexagonal tiles, and that's really about all there is to it. So I suppose we're done here then. See you next time. What do you mean there's more? Okay, fine, I'll continue. Each of the hexagons that's placed has to be put next to another, but the player will gain bonus points and more tiles if the edges of the successive ones match each other. Linking these together in this way also allows for the expansion of towns and forests, which will be useful as some tiles have stipulations that mean they gain even more points if the player is able to connect a certain amount of that type of environment together. If even that is too much pressure though, there is also a creative mode, which allows the player to create the village and countryside of their dreams with an infinite number of tiles and no specific goals. However, you can also opt to go the other direction and impose more limitations, or try out the different monthly challenges the game offers. The relaxing music and serotonin-inducing sounds of Dorfromantik, as well as the ability to play your own way, make it a great way to wind down at the end of a stressful day.